As hy, dankie. Ek hoop julle het middagete geniet en het verstaan hoe om jou eie ding te bou. Was nie by die verkeerde tafel soos ek nie. En hou en klou met dank van ons geassosieerde lede aan hulle. So it's my privilege to announce Minister John Steenhuisen. In Afrikaans we got a saying, never say never, nooit. En nooit is 'n lang tyd. It was quite a shocker. Good luck with all the expectations that's put on your table and shoulders. We're going to ask you, we've created a platform for questions for the Minister, especially Minister John first. So we're not going to have questions after his speech. We're going to do that in the panel. So if you've got a question, put it on that platform. If you don't understand that platform, please don't ask me. Ask Deirdre or Naomi. They know how it works. And after that, I'll quickly introduce Minister Dean. Thank you.
Baie dankie vir die wonderlike geleentheid om saam met julle vandag in Limpopo te wees. Dis 'n groot voorreg vir my hier te wees vandag en ek kan sien 'n paar van my ouer vriende, maar ek sien ook 'n kamer propvol nuwe vriende in hierdie sektor. So wat doen 'n Soutie van Natal hier in Limpopo by julle Kongres? En ek dink julle was almal verbaas toe dit was aangekondig dat ek die nuwe minister van Landbou in Suid-Afrika sal wees. En ek dink die vraag wat mense vir my altyd vra is, het jy hierdie pos gekies of het die president net vir jou gegee? En ek kan vir julle almal vandag hand op hart sê dat ek het hierdie pos gekies. Ek het baie hard gekyk na die poste wat op die tafel was en daar's geen manier ek wou met gevangenes werk. Ek het 3 van my eie kinders, so dis geen manier ek saam met skoolkinders sal werk. Ek stel nie belang in gebouery nie. En ek het hierdie sektor gekies en hierdie pos gekies want ek sien daar's groot geleenthede in hierdie departement vir groei, vir werksgeleenthede in ons land en vir ekonomiese ontwikkeling. And so it wasn't long after I was announced as the Minister of Agriculture, before these wonderful memes started to appear all over social media. There was a meme with me in a pair of very tight and short bootable pants. And I can safely tell all of you those legs were not mine. Although my wife looked at those legs and said, I wish they were yours. And there was me on the tractor. There was me in my official vehicle, a farm vehicle on the way to work. And of course, John Steenhuisen was born into this particular position. But it really is a huge opportunity and a wonderful pleasure for me to be working with all of you in this sector. I'm not a farmer, I'm the first to admit it. I had a grandfather who farmed in KwaZulu-Natal. I had a small period where I did kiwi fruit and pecan nuts in KwaZulu-Natal. But this is such an incredible sector. And having attended NAMPO over the last couple of years, been taken there by Annette Steen, who said, you've got to come to NAMPO. It's very important you meet with farmers. They're the most important people in the country. And over the last 5 or so years that I've attended NAMPO, it has been absolutely clear to me how important this sector is for South Africa. And I see real opportunity in this sector. And I get to work on a daily basis with incredible people. Because you can say what you like, South African farmers are the best farmers in the entire world. South African farm workers are the best farm workers in the entire world. And why do I say that? I say that because just look how well this sector does, despite the most enormous challenges that it faces on a daily basis. This is not a subsidized agriculture industry, and our farmers here in South Africa are up against many other countries in the world that are heavily subsidized. And yet our products compete and attract massive prices on those markets. South African products are respected all over the world. And that is a tribute to the incredible resilience, the innovation, and effectiveness of our farmers in this country. So I think you all deserve a round of applause for yourselves for the incredible work that you do every day. I'm also very glad to be in this department because you may need the Home Affairs Minister maybe a couple of times every few years to get your ID document or your passport, and you may need the Education Minister while your children are at school, and you may need the Environment Minister when you've got a concern about something that's happening nearby you. But you need the Department of Agriculture 3 times a day, every South African. Because without this department, without this sector, it is impossible for our nation to feed itself, and it's possible for our nation to survive. So this is an incredibly important sector, and I'm looking greatly forward to working with each and every one of you as we work together to build the sector. And I want to start with that word, together, because this sector will never, ever succeed if we are not able to build the partnerships within the sector and the department. I see this as a partnership. Ek sien dit soos as 'n vennootskap tussen die departement en die sektor. En as ons kan lekker saamwerk, ek dink daar's niks wat in ons pad kan staan om te groei, meer geld te maak en seker te maak dat ons voedselsekuriteit in Suid-Afrika werk. But there are going to be a few things that need to be done. And so the ministry wants to partner with industry and with our farmers to make it as easy as possible for farmers to farm and do what they do best. And the great thing about this sector, unlike many others, is that the expertise and the experience and the real knowledge exists amongst our stakeholders. Who are our stakeholders? Our stakeholders are anybody in this country who is involved in agriculture. Our stakeholders are the small farmer. Our stakeholders are the large commercial farmer. Our stakeholders are the super farmers. Our stakeholders are the agricultural organizations, the boereverenigings wat saamwerk, the co-ops, everybody involved in this sector. Those are our stakeholders. There are a few things I'm going to be focusing on over the next few years because I think these are some of the important things that the department can do to make it easier for farmers to be able to prosper and grow, but also to increase yields and to be able to increase profitability. And first and foremost amongst them, outside of the partnership building, which has begun, and I've been very happy to have attended a number of these Agri Congresses. I've been in the Free State, and I've been in where else were we in it? Free State, and with the Western Cape tomorrow. You're the second, Agri Eastern Cape. We were in the Eastern Cape as well. And to just come and sit at these congresses and listen to the incredible work that's being done, but also to the challenges, and to see what we can do to get rid of those challenges. But first and foremost on my agenda is biosecurity. And this is going to be a huge focus for certainly the next few years in my department. Why biosecurity? Well, because I think that we've let things slide a little bit on the biosecurity front, certainly from the department side, over the last couple of years. And we've seen the devastating effects of outbreaks of foot and mouth disease, of avian flu, and of African swine fever, and the absolute devastation that it causes when you have these uncontrolled outbreaks. I've just returned a week and a half ago from the Eastern Cape, where we had an interaction with the farmers there in Humansdorp, and it's heartbreaking to hear how many of these farmers and their dairy farms have been completely wiped out by this uncontrolled spread of foot-and-mouth disease. But biosecurity also affects things like our plant health, being able to ensure that we are able to combat pests and other diseases that affect our crops, affect our yields, and affect, most importantly, our ability to market South African products to other countries abroad. And so biosecurity has to be all of our responsibility. And I'm very glad that Johan, in his presentation, said it clearly, that it has to become part of our culture in the agricultural sector, this focus on biosecurity. Because if we are not able to control these diseases and prevent them from infecting our crops, infecting our livestock, it shakes the confidence of our international trading partners around South African products. And believe you me, although we may not want to acknowledge it, a foot-and-mouth outbreak in the Eastern Cape affects the confidence internationally of South African beef in other parts of the country and dairy products in other parts of the country. Citrus black spot affects the citrus industry across the entire country. And I fundamentally believe that if we can work together to improve biosecurity in our country, that not only will we be able to ensure that we don't have farmers being wiped out or adversely affected economically, but that we can start to demand a higher premium for South African products. And my goal is, by the time I leave office, to have South African products synonymous with the highest levels of biosecurity, and to give our international trading partners and our value chains confidence in the products that we have in this country. The second thing that I want to focus on is ensuring that the department is able to create a modern, progressive, legislative, and regulatory environment for the agricultural sector. There's a lot of updating that needs to be done in the sector. There's a lot of updating that needs to be done in the law. And I'm committed to doing that and driving these new regulations and new bills through Parliament to modernize them. Act 36, for instance, passed in 1947. The world has moved on from then. There are new techniques, there are new medicines, there are new opportunities that await out there. And we need to make sure that as South Africa, we can capitalize on all of those to ensure that our agricultural sector remains on the very cutting edge of technological and biological and agricultural advancements all over the world, and that we are not left behind by other countries who have embraced these new techniques and new opportunities that exist. And so we'll be going through the full suite of legislation that currently governs the agricultural sector and looking about how we can build a progressive, modern, exciting regulatory environment that works for agriculture, that makes it as easy as possible for you to do what you do best, which is get out there and produce, and make sure that nothing stands in your way of being able to produce at your maximum. We also want to focus on the farmer support that is required. And I think there are opportunities for the department to be a support to farmers, whether they be small farmers or subsistence farmers, all the way up to your super farmers. There are some who like to trade off and say that it is an either or. You can either be a friend of large agriculture or you must be a friend of small agriculture. I don't buy that. I don't think it's an either or, I think it is an and. And I think that the department can play a supportive role for farmers across the entire spectrum. And we want to position ourselves as a department that is responsive, that is up to date with the issues facing our farmers, whether they be small or whether they be large, to understand the issues facing them, from access to finance, to access to proper research, access to proper technology. Those are the things we need to understand as a department if we're going to be able to provide the requisite level of support. We need to understand from our stakeholders the type of support that they want. I don't think it helps to sit in an office in Pretoria and decide amongst a group of people, many of whom have never farmed before, about what farmers need or want and the type of support they want. I think it needs to be a pull up from the ground up, where farmers tell us, this is a type of support that we want in this sector. This is the type of things we expect the department to be doing. And I look forward to understanding those better, getting to understand them in a more in-depth way, so that we can make sure that the department is able to tailor its support to the various sectors of this particular agricultural family. And that is why it has been so important for me to meet with the big players in Agri-SA and AgBiz, but also with some of the smaller farmer associations like AFASA and others over the last few weeks, to understand from them what their expectations are of our department. And I undertake to make sure that the department has an open door and an open ear to anybody who has a great idea or has a more innovative way of doing things. And when I talk about innovation, I talk about the things and the opportunities that exist for us to really move the sector forward. And I've made it very clear to the officials in my department, when I ask a question why, I don't want to hear that's because that's how it's been done for the last 30 years. I want evidence-based responses. I want scientific-based responses. And I want responses that make sense at a practical level as well. These are the things that we need to get right in the department if we're going to provide the support that's required. I'm also very glad, although some people have seen it as a negative, I see it as a huge opportunity that the Department of Agriculture is now, for the first time in a long time, a department on its own, separated from land reform and rural development. If I look back at the annual performance plans, if I look back at the parliamentary debates over the course of the last 10 years, there's no doubt that the land reform and rural development part of this portfolio has sucked up a lot of the oxygen, gained a lot of the attention. And I'm really looking forward to refocusing the spotlight on what we can do in the agriculture sector. Although we have a very strong linkage still with the Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development, and we will continue to do so because there are linkages between the departments, I think agriculture is again taking its rightful place as a ministry of its own. And if you want any proof of that, you only need to have a look at the incredible figures from Q1 of the GDP figures this year. Once again, it's agriculture that has held up the corner. It's agriculture that has shone while other sectors have fallen backwards. So the Minister of Public Works and Construction has got a lot of catching up to do if one looks at the 6% year-on-year growth in Q1 this year for the agriculture sector in this country. And if you look at the 27% quarter-on-quarter growth of the agricultural sector this year, it is the farmers, it is the organizations, it is our agro-processors, it is our feedlots, it's our auction houses, and it's our exporters that are driving this economy in South Africa. So you can give yourselves another round of applause for that. What a great Q1. What a great Q1. It's been a great quarter. I want to say as well that we need to focus on the preservation and protection of agricultural land in South Africa. Having just attended the G20 summit in Brazil, and South Africa will be assuming the presidency of the G20 later this year, there's been a very strong focus on food security and how a nation ensures that it has food security with enough food to not only feed itself and to ensure its own citizens have access to food, but how it can play a role in assisting food security in other parts of the world as well. And it's been incredible to see some of the innovations there. But that is not possible if our agricultural land is shrinking under the pressure of mining, of industrial activities, of urban development. And we do need to ensure that we have a system in place to protect agricultural land. Because once agricultural land is lost, it is lost forever. I've looked and scoured the books over the last couple of weeks to find a single example anywhere in the world where a housing development has been bulldozed to make way for farmlands, or a mine has been forced to shut because it's more important to grow produce and food on top of it. You won't find an example anywhere in the world. And so that is why we must protect our agricultural land now, because if it disappears, it will disappear forever. And when our agricultural land disappears, our food security is imperiled. And when we cannot feed a nation, that's when the trouble starts. And we've seen that already in South Africa in far too many examples. We also then need to ensure that the department is making sure that the voice of agriculture is heard in other departments and in other sectors. And I've already heard, after the brief time I was here this morning, the huge challenges being faced with things like infrastructure, roads, rail networks, the functioning of the ports, rural safety, access to water and water rights. Now, these are all things that don't fall under the Department of Agriculture, but have an incredibly important knock-on effect on agriculture and its viability. And I want to give every person in this room and to the agricultural sector across the country that I will ensure that agriculture has the loudest voice around the table when it comes to liaising with the police to ensure that we beef up rural security, to be able to deal with infrastructure and ports and making sure that we're undoing the blockages there. And getting those ports unblocked has to be one of the highest priorities that we can have as a country because of the huge opportunity that exists for export. I also want to focus on a track and trace system for livestock. I think this is important from two very key perspectives. Firstly, if we're going to have biosecurity in the country, we need to have a system that ensures that you're able to track and trace livestock from wherever it has come from. And I've had some really great engagements with people like Deerwald and others in the industry around how we can start to do this and roll it out in a sustainable way and in a way that is easy for everybody to be part of a system. I also believe that if we have a proper track and trace system, we can start to combat stock theft in a more comprehensive way. Because nobody should be moving livestock around the country without the requisite papers and without being able to track and trace those animals to the paper. So when we have roadblocks and the like, we're able to see in a very simple and quick way who these animals belong to, where they've come from, and where they're going to. I also think that we need to get into the system for another important reason. Our trading partners, both locally and internationally in the value chain, are starting to drive a process very determinedly towards a farm-to-fork approach. When you unpack meat at a supermarket, the consumers want to know where that animal has come from, where that product has come from. And I think that the track and trace system will ensure that we are keeping up with these international trends and are able to ensure that that goes forward. We also then need to focus, like a laser beam, on opening up new markets for South Africa and expanding current markets. I'm going to start with the expansion of current markets. I think we could be doing a lot more with existing trade agreements that we have with some of our key partners, mainly in Europe, but also the United States of America. Just yesterday afternoon, I had my very first meeting with my counterpart in the United States of America, Secretary Vilsack, who is the US Secretary of Agriculture. And we had a very positive discussion about how we can break down some of the issues that are preventing our products from moving into the United States of America. And we will be hosting a technical meeting amongst the two teams from the two countries in the first week of September to look at how we can resolve some of the biosecurity concerns and protocols that are long outstanding, that affect things like avocados, that affect things like stone fruit, that affect things like other citrus products from other parts of the country into the United States of America. And so I think there is some low-hanging fruit there. And again, if we get the biosecurity right, I believe we go in with a much stronger case to be able to open up and expand on those markets there. The European Union as well, we already know they're receiving beef, and Botswana and Namibia are doing incredibly well out of being able to get red meat into the European Union. It should be us. It should be us. We should be the ones that are spearheading that particular drive into Europe, given the bilateral trade agreement we have. But again, biosecurity concerns have held us back from being able to do that. If we can demonstrate to our European partners that we are serious about biosecurity, that we have measures in place, and that it has become the responsibility of everybody in our agricultural sector, I think that we can we can be the country with a seat at that table, because I know for sure, I've tasted that beef from those other countries, I know for sure ours is a hell of a lot better, a hell of a lot tastier, and a hell of a lot better quality, because you can't beat a South African farmer. And then looking to new markets, and this is important. We need to proactively go out into new markets and seek new opportunities for our citrus fruits, for our plant products, and for our animal products in other countries. Just 2 weeks ago, our first avocados landed in Japan, and I hope it's going to be the opening up of a far greater opportunity for us in Japan for more products. The Middle East is becoming a huge marketing opportunity for livestock products, as well as fruit, vegetables, and other grains. There's huge opportunities as well in Africa for us to start pursuing greater trade with them. I am concerned about the issue around Botswana and Namibia blocking our farmers from being able to get our products over the border, in spite of a SACU agreement that we have, that you cannot just simply arbitrarily close borders. Now, I understand that some people want to protect local industries, and I understand that perhaps those countries want to build their own infrastructure, but this has to be done in an orderly way and in a way that complies with the agreements that we have as countries. It needs to be something that is negotiated around a negotiating table, rather than being a war being waged on Twitter ahead of elections. We need to sit down responsibly. We need to reopen those routes and make those countries understand that as part of their food security, they actually need South Africa's farmers to be able to get their food security right and to ensure a certainty of supply. And so there is much to do as the Agriculture Department, and I'm very glad we've hit the ground running. I want to end by just talking and zooming out a little bit from the sector to the macroeconomic environment, because it is very important, as we saw from Johan's presentation, around sentiment, around optimism, around hope, and about talking the country up. The May election was the first election in 30 years where no party received an outright majority. There was a very clear message from the people of South Africa, not the bureaucrats, not the institutions, not the media, not the think tanks. The people of South Africa said, we're not giving any of you guys your own majority, but we expect you to work together and find a way forward. And after some very tense negotiations, we found a way forward. And I think that the government of national unity offers our country a chance of great hope and great renewal. A second chance to really start to drive the reforms that we need to get our country moving forward. We cannot sustainably live with 32 million people trapped below the poverty line. We cannot sustainably live with a 42% unemployment rate. We cannot sustainably live with a crime rate where 75 South Africans are murdered every single day. And the only way we're going to fix that is by driving the reform agenda through Parliament and through government. And that is what we've set about doing under the Government of National Unity. In a few months' time, the medium-term development plan, which we've all been working towards behind closed doors, from the very first Cabinet Lekgotla that President Ramaphosa convened, is going to contain some really exciting new things that I think are going to back up the sentiment with some real action steps. And that's when you're going to see the optimism really take off. Because if we can get the medium-term development plan and the many great things contained therein, from fixing our infrastructure, and I'm sure Dean will talk about that a little bit more, to be able to ensure that we are able to bring capable, competent government through evidence-based decision-making. We're able to look at innovative ways of reducing the cost of living. We're able to ensure that more resources are going into infrastructure that promotes growth and investment rather than into bailing out state-owned entities. If we have a budget that's aligned to that, then I can tell you South Africa will be ready to take off and take its rightful place again where it belongs. And I couldn't be more excited about that. And I'm very excited that my party is playing a role in that. Because it is very clear that the people of South Africa want to build, they want to grow, And that the days of just simply pointing fingers at each other across a table and apportioning blame in every direction we can is going to get us nowhere. The thing that's going to get us somewhere is by all of us, those who wish to build the country, putting our shoulders to the wheel together and pushing our country forward. And so it makes no difference whether you're black or white, you Indian or colored, you are English, Afrikaans, isiZulu, isiXhosa, or any one of the other official languages, whether you live in an urban area or a rural area. The best of every South African is now required if we're going to move our country forward. And those naysayers who sit on the sidelines dooming the GNU to fail, I have a very clear message for them. We're not going to fail. And the reason we're not going to fail is because the alternative is just too ghastly to contemplate. Because if the breakers and the dividers and those who wish to see destruction and violence get into a position of power, there will be nothing left in our country. And so we, the builders of the country, must stand united together as a bulwark against a descent into chaos, violence, division, and hatred. And that is why it's now time for us to all join hands and be part of the builders. I couldn't be more excited to be part of this government, and I couldn't be more excited to be working with you. And I look forward to seeing what all of us together can do over the next 5 years. There's a great saying, when agriculture works, everything else falls into place. I look forward to proving that right over the next 5 years with your help. Thank you very much.
Exciting, exciting. Casper, Gilvallen, Christo Kutsie, julle is ons Marula Borg van Volksgasbank, né? Nee?
You persevere, building on the foundations that were laid before you, focused on providing for those who will inherit the fruit of your labor. You grow, strengthened by the knowledge that this valley of shadow is not where the story ends. Tomorrow will come, ripe with potential, bringing sprouts of progress and birthing opportunity. You grow because you are not alone. You work alongside partners who share your vision, empowering your story, relieving your struggle, and celebrating your victories. Write your story with partners who are part of your world, who are committed to building your legacy, and who will stand by you so that you can grow with confidence through every season.